Good evening. It's 7:27, Texas. This is your sweet cousin, your lovable buddy. This is Vinny, and I'm back with another episode of Backyard Bullshit. Sorry for the hiatus, but it's always good to get back on the mic with the boys. And we've got an extra special show for you today. One unparalleled by anything you've heard on these airwaves before, let me tell you. We're doing the highly anticipated, the super jazzed up motivated. If you are not sexually aroused for this, what are you doing? We're talking about the Backyard Showdown, where our lovable Mickey and Coolhand are going to break down their top 5 all-time NBA players by position, and then we're going to figure out head-to-head who wins. So I know you guys are just jazzed up. Again, I'm just jazzed up. How about you guys? Mick, Coolhand?
I'm ready to rock.
I am ready to throw down.
Good. Because throw down we will. Throw down we will. So, Mickey, real quick, introduce yourself. Tell the listeners at home who you are and why we love you so much. And I want the main attribute that you think is going to set your 5 best players apart from Coolhand.
Well, hello there. My name is Mickey. I am the producer of the Backyard Bullshit podcast, as well as will be producing this very segment, the Backyard. I think you called it a showdown. That actually sounds a lot better than what I had in mind, which is the throwdown. But anywho, so my lineup consists of, I'm doing your standard lineup. No, nothing special here. No 2 power forward lineups. No 2 forwards lineup. Nothing like that. So
keeping it straight up, like you do.
Oh yeah, classic lineups. So at my 1 spot, I have a man who is I personally believe is.
Hold on. So before we dive into the lineups, because we will get to that. But I want to just know, as you look at your 5 guys on your list before you tell everybody, what's the main attribute? Is it size? Is it speed? Is it competitiveness? What's the difference that your 5 guys have that are going to beat Coolhand's 5 guys? What's that X factor?
My X factor is that I believe my lineup has the higher offensive and defensive IQ than Coolhand's team.
All right. We got wizards of the game. We got geniuses. Okay. So, Coolhand, you don't sound impressed. Why don't you introduce yourself and same question. What's that X factor that's going to set your team apart?
Well, I'm Coolhand. I'm one of the hosts of the show, along with our gracious host tonight, Vinny.
That's so sweet of you.
As well as Dog Z, who unfortunately wasn't able to join us tonight due to a gasoline incident.
Doc Z? Damn, I haven't heard Dealer be called that in a long time.
Old Zuby at his heart.
Well, but what's really going to set mine apart, I think, is I chose a lot of guys who dominated. When they got on the court, they dominated. They were the best players out there. They showed what they can do. They just physically dominated their opponent.
Okay.
And that's where my team's really going to stand out compared to old Mickey.
So I'm hearing IQ and brawn. All right, brains versus bronze here in the game of basketball. I mean, we know nobody's short. These guys are the human equivalent of giants we have running around. 7'4". Jesus Christ. But those are our X factors. Now, I before we dive in, I want to know, Mick, if you had to pick one position on that team that you put together, what's that X factor? Is it your center? Is it your point guard? Being a high IQ guy, maybe that would make sense. But I want you to tell me.
You know, I feel like a lot of the players, when put them head to head, I also think they cancel each other out, except for one. And I think the only player matchup between the 5 of us that has a significant advantage, I believe, is my center.
Okay. So your center The big man down low with the high IQ is the X Factor. Coolhand. He's talking shit about your center, man. He's talking shit about your center. Who's your X Factor?
I think mine's going to be my small forward.
Okay.
He's a true complete aspect of the game. He truly does everything.
Well, you know, with the description of the center and the description of your small forwards there, I imagine people are now salivating at the thought of getting these lineups. So without further ado, let's get to the meat. Let's get to the good stuff here. Let's hit your lineups position by position. Mick, I want you to go first for us. Running out at that number 1 spot, who's your point guard?
My point guard is a man who I believe is highly underrated by today's generation. Now, granted, he has a lot of competition with the likes of Magic, Isaiah Thomas, and more recent picks such as Allen Iverson and Stephen Curry. But what a lot of people don't realize is that this man was one of the smartest NBA players of his time. He would not only know where you are, but he would also remember where you are, and he would hand out dimes like it was nobody's business. This man has 2 NBA records on both sides of the floor. The man who is number 1 in NBA total assists and steals. The number 12 from the Utah Jazz, Johnny Stockton.
Johnny Stockton, indeed. And well said there. I like the way you kind of describe his career.
The stats speak for themselves.
They do. Wow, okay. So, we've got Stockton. Now, Coolhand, hit us with the truth.
All right. So my point guard really kind of transitioned to what the old school point guards, the John Stockton, he's a fantastic player, but really is more the modern day point guard. Doesn't quite shoot the 3 as well as some of these modern day guys do, but he's got the size, he's got the presence, he's got the leadership ability. He's been a coach in the NBA. My guy, one of the original Triple J's in Dallas, and actually helped bring an NBA championship to Dallas. Jason Kidd.
Jason Kidd, yes. In fact, originally drafted by Dallas and wound up winning a championship with Dallas, like you said. J. Kidd, man. Why J. Kidd?
I just feel I like his size. I like his leadership presence. Don't get me wrong, Jock Stockton's a great player, but I just want someone that when they get out on the floor, they think they're the best player. And you'll see that pretty much throughout my whole lineup, that I like guys that know that they're good.
I'm with you there. You definitely need a guy with some swagger. You definitely want some guy with some confidence. So we've got
a guy with an actual NBA championship, by the way. I just want to point that
Oh,
out.
shots across the bow.
Yeah, I knew that was going to happen at some point.
It was. Yes, you are right, sir. Jason Kidd has a ring where John Stockton cannot say that he does. But there's 5 guys on the floor at one. All right, so we got our point guard matchup here, and it's a good one. Stockton versus Kidd. Coolhand, we're going to keep it with you. Go ahead and take us to the next spot.
Okay.
Give us your shooting guard, your number 2.
Well, this was the second easiest guy to get on my list. I mean, there are people who consider him to be the greatest of all time. That's debatable. Depends on where you're from and what your area is. But the man was unstoppable, and the reason why that John Stockton does not have an NBA championship, because he beat him twice. Michael Jeffrey Jordan.
Oh, man. 2-3. The Jordan brain. I would ask you to explain that pick. I don't need you to explain that pick. I know why you picked Jordan. It's the greatest of all time. So, I'm going to slide this right over to Mick. You got anybody that can compete with Michael Jordan?
I do. Michael Jordan.
Whoa!
I mean, duh, right? Who would? I mean, there are some players you could put in your 2 spot depending on what your team composition is. But if you're going just purely based on talent, just duh.
Yeah, I mean,
that one kind of answers itself. I mean, he is the best shooting guard of all time. You might be able to sneak in Kobe in there. You know, the depth of the NBA during Kobe's era versus Michael Jordan's era is completely different. But he changed what the NBA became.
Yeah.
The NBA became world famous after Michael Jordan.
It did. And you can't deny that. I will say, though, for the listeners, you know, we love the Stockton Kidd matchup, but then you both go with the same player. Are we going to get 4 guys that are identical on each team, and we're going to wind up debating John Stockton or Jay Kidd? Or do we have other guys coming up?
Oh, I believe there's other guys coming. We definitely have differing views after this.
Do we? Okay. Well, with the point guards, Stockton v. Kidd, I like it. Now, we've got Jordan. They're totally going to cancel each other out. We can talk about how great Jordan is all day, but Mick, let's get into the next spot and start seeing the differentiation between these teams. Who's your small forward?
So, my small forward is the second half of the greatest NBA rivalry in history. This is a guy who is more intertwined with his contemporary rival than he is almost his own teammates. He is known for being one of the smartest players on the court, one of the most determined players on the court. There are so many stories of him talking trash and then backing up every single thing he says by doing exactly what he said he's going to do, that there are compilations of them on YouTube of NBA players just saying, hey, this guy said he was going to do this, and then he did exactly this. That man is Larry Bird.
Larry Bird. Okay. And you can't deny his greatness. What with the run with the Celtics, like you mentioned. How many championships does the guy have?
3.
Guy's got 3 rings, and yeah, absolutely. You know, when you talk about the rivalry, I assume you're talking Lakers Celtics.
Oh yeah, he's like you can't say Larry Bird without Magic Johnson somewhere behind there, and vice versa. Those two are, you just can't talk about them separately. But we're gonna try.
No. I'm with you. 2 of the greatest players of all time that paved the way, and you know, I was starting to judge you, Mick, but putting Bird at small forward, makes a lot of sense. Maybe you got a brain on your shoulders afterwards. Now, Coolhand, you're going up against Stockton, Jordan, and Larry Bird now. You got Jason Kidd, you got Michael Jordan. Who are you going to put at the small forward to keep things competitive?
Well, I'm going to roll the guy out there, the guy I consider to be the greatest of all time, guy who actually averages more assists and more rebounds than Michael Jordan and almost as many points. A guy that's truly dominated the Eastern Conference for most of his career. The person who went to 8 straight finals, only won 3 of them, but like I was saying earlier about Michael Jordan, the depth of the league now is a lot bigger. It's a lot greater than it was back in those days.
Okay.
The guy that can do it all, the Akron Hammer, the Little Emperor, the Chosen One, King LeBron James.
The Chosen One, indeed. So that's quite the matchup, you two, of, you know, classic versus new. I mean, there's a lot of guys that paved the way before LJ, but you think you're going to put LeBron James not only as that small forward spot, the greatest of all time there, but did I hear you say the greatest player of all time?
I'm going greatest player of all time. I may have Michael Jordan on my team, but I just feel like LeBron brings more to the table. He's a better assist guy. He blocks more shots. They have almost the same number of steals per game. I just feel he brings more to the table, and his size, he is physically unstoppable when he gets ahead of steam going. If you're standing in the way, don't take the charge. Save the
Truly dominant. Truly dominant. Okay, well, I want to talk a little bit about the new school versus old school more. I mean, I can't deny that. Physically, one of the most dominant players at the position. You say maybe the greatest player of all time. We'll save those reserves for later. But it's certainly matching up to be some good lineups here. With Mick, you're sitting at John Stockton, Michael Jordan, and Larry Bird. In Coolhand, you're sitting at Jason Kidd, Michael Jordan, and LeBron James. We got 2 more spots to fill. All right, then we're going to break these teams down a little bit and see who would win in this head-to-head matchup that we're talking about here on the Backyard Showdown. Coolhand, you give us 3, give us 4. Give us the best power forward as we get bigger and bigger on these teams.
Okay,
Who's your power
this
forward?
one depends on how you define what the 4 is. The 4 has changed so much over the last 30, 40 years.
It has.
That it depends on how you define the role. And if you consider him a 4, he's the greatest ever. He's quiet. He does everything you ask him to do. He played in a small market and was happy the whole time. Also, by the way, a T16 swimmer, which is what they base Olympic triathletes on, the Olympic trials times on. My boy, from the San Antonio Spurs, the big fundamental, Tim Duncan.
Tim Duncan, indeed. Yeah. One, I did not know the swimming fact. Okay, so are you telling me that Tim Duncan is like an Olympic caliber swimmer as well?
If he had chose to do that path, he probably could have. He'd at least been a borderline Olympian. I'm not sure if he'd have made the Olympics, but just to be
but he's
almost
a
7
stellar,
feet tall and to be that with that level of coordination is unbelievable to me.
Okay. So we've got more to talk about when we break these teams down, and obviously we'll circle back to some attributes you think why Timmy deserves this spot. But I want to know right here, right now, is Tim Duncan coming out of retirement for a professional swimming career? Tell me the answer is yes.
Maybe if he competes for the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Okay. See, this gives me something to wake up in the morning and look forward to. All right? This is the stuff I need. Timmy Duncan taking that power forward spot for Coolhand. So now we're sitting with Jason Kidd, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Tim Duncan there for Coolhand with 1 position to go. Mick, Timmy Duncan's a heck of a power forward. At times played the 5, but as Coolhand said, the way the position's changed, I mean, considers him the greatest 4 of all time. Do you have somebody who's better?
When it comes to whether or not this player is better, I think you can make the argument that he isn't.
Oh.
But, there's a big but here. A lot of what Coolhand just said about...
I cannot lie.
You other brothers can't deny. But the thing is that what Coolhand said about Tim Duncan revolutionizing the 4 spot. Playing in a small organization for a relatively small organization and team and market for his entire career, was happy for it the entire time. All of that can also be said about my guy. The only thing I'll add is that the reason I picked this guy over Tim Duncan is because I feel like he is more of a threat on the offensive end of the floor than Tim Duncan. And I can get why into specifics later. But for now, a plucky little kid from Germany. 7 feet tall. Hashtag Swish41, Dirk Nowitzki.
Dirk Nowitzki, who, correct me if I'm wrong, he just passed a record?
He is now number 6 on the all-time NBA scoring list by passing Wilt Chamberlain a little bit over a week ago.
So, that says a lot right there. The man has scored more points than Wilt freaking Chamberlain. Can you believe that?
I can. I sure as hell
He's been around a
can.
long time. They play more games now, but I do have to give Dirk his credit. He really revolutionized Europeans in basketball, and there's something to be said for that.
There absolutely is. There absolutely is. He was, there were some guys before him, but, as far as really revolutionizing the European market and players coming over here, Dirk deserves a lot of credit there. And that's a great matchup. We'll dive into it a little more because we got to keep
Matchup
this
that we
thing.
saw a lot, actually.
We did. We saw a lot of it, and we should touch on that. We should touch on games we saw. But we should also play it out on a court we haven't seen, and that's this metaphorical court that we are talking about on the radio. But we got to stay on track here. All right, we got 4 guys. Now, Mick, you got John Stockton, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Dirk Nowitzki. But we need a big guy. We need a 5, and I need a true 5. So, who's this big man that's going to round out your team here?
Well, I have the 6th all-time NBA score on my 4 spot. It only makes sense for my 5 spot to go to the number 1 leading scorer on the NBA all-time scoring list. Now, Coolhand, you mentioned domination. I gotta admit, there was a part of me that did consider that when I was picking this guy. And the more I looked it up, the more it just became clear. No one's more dominant than my center. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Indeed, the all-time leading scorer. And yet another in the long line of historic Lakers. Possibly the best Laker of all time, some could say. Just as Kareem have.
Lakers, Bucks, he made both those teams better.
He did.
Well, I know he won 1 with the Bucks, and then I think he won 2 with the Lakers, 3 with the Lakers.
Let me see here. Let me see.
Regardless of the amount of rings, being the all-time leading scorer, the most
Or at
dominant
least
player.
a percentage of time is impressive.
Oh yeah. For being a 5 and being that dominant a scorer says a lot with how guys score the ball in basketball and how shooters have come about over the years and things like that. And he's so far ahead of the game with the amount of points he has, upwards of 36,000, I want to say.
Right.
So we've got a real lined up 5 guys here. Mick with John Stockton, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Dirk Nowitzki, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Now, some would say that would be the 90s U.S. Dream Team. That starting 5 sounds like one of the most incredible assimilations of basketball I've ever heard. But Coolhand, we're going to give you a shot. You got one more guy here. You've given us Jason Kidd. You've given us Michael Jordan. You've given us LeBron James. You've given us Tim Duncan. A really good team in its own respect. But that 5's got to round it out if you're going to beat Mickey.
Alright. So you notice there's a little bit of a theme to my team. I saw all of these guys play.
Okay.
And so I wanted the guys that physically dominated were guys that I saw. And this guy was the most dominant human being I've ever seen in my life. For his size and his weight and his agility and his ability to move around, to not be moved around when he needed to not be moved around. There is no one in this league that was a worse actor, but I'm going with the big Aristotle, Shaquille O'Neal.
Man, it's funny you say that. Could not be moved at all.
Except by a hot chip.
This is true.
Well, now that he's gotten older, he's not very good at getting over wires either, but...
Yeah, it's true. And if you follow him on Instagram, his feet look awful.
Really?
Oh my God! Can you imagine the abuse those feet have taken carrying that fucking 7-foot tall monster around?
But you know how Shaq got recruited to LSU was his father-in-law, or not father, stepfather was in the Army. They were over in Germany, and the LSU basketball coach had come over to do a basketball camp for the Army. Well, they got this kid who's just slamming, and like, coach goes up and asks, like, how long have you been in the Army? Oh, no, coach, I'm only 13. I need to talk to your father right now.
Yeah, I need to have a conversation with your dad.
Yeah.
13. Jesus Christ.
Did he get an offer right then?
Sitting there slamming it like it's nothing.
Because that was before the day. You know, it's not unheard of for a recruit at 13 to get called on nowadays. But tell me, do you know if Shaq was recruited? Did he get an offer right there on the spot at 13, and that's why he chose LSU?
I do not know the answer to that, but I would imagine they didn't wait long afterwards.
Yeah, I assume if they could, they did right away.
Yeah. Because he ended up moving to San Antonio. And
we have our 5 now. All right, Coolhand has given us Jason Kidd, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Tim Duncan, and Shaquille O'Neal. And Mickey's given us John Stockton, Michael Jordan, Larry Gretzky, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Fantastic 5-on-5s in their own respect. On paper, kind of tough to figure out who would be the winner, if I'm being honest with you. So we're going to take it position by position and let you guys kind of break this down. Now, let me ask you guys and kind of let y'all talk back and forth a bit. For John Stockton and Jason Kidd, is it size or skill? Is it scoring or passing? You know, what to you is their most important features as point guards? And really, in general, what's the most important feature for point guards, you know, in today's game, in game, you know, back in the day? Let me hear it.
Well, if you're talking today's game, like, you have to have range. I mean, I think Stephen Curry is kind of proven to be the quintessential point guard of this generation. I mean, he gets stereotyped as being a guy who can only shoot, but there are so many other layers to this game, to Stephen Curry's game, that separates him. So I honestly don't.
But I will say that's today's game, though. Because would you agree, John Stockton definitely doesn't have the most range of all time, yet he's your best point guard, so you must value something else.
Right. So the reason I value Stockton over Kidd is that you mentioned ability, skill, scoring, and passing. To me, it has to be a mixture of all three, and in all three of those categories, I feel like Stockton is better than Jason Kidd. Here's the thing about Stockton. I'll even throw Michael Jordan in this. If Michael Jordan has the ball, he becomes an immediate scoring threat because he can do so many other things to get around you. He can shoot the three and somewhat. With Stockton, if he has the ball, then everyone becomes a scoring threat because Stockton is a pass-first point guard, and he will find a way to get the ball to you if you are open. And considering his teammates, he has a fuck ton of options. And in my opinion, John Stockton has that advantage over Jason Kidd. Because John Stockton, if you're defending him, you're not defending John Stockton. You're defending 5 different dudes. So that's my opening statement.
I can see that.
What else? Go ahead.
No, please.
So, my thing about Jason Kidd is, what I would say is, in today's game, Michael Jordan would be more of a three-point shooter. He would have just developed that attribute more because he could. And so, what I want is a guy who's got some size, can get to the basket, and then distribute out. Make the defenders collapse, and then he's more than a good enough passer. And I know, you got these little guards out there like Stephen Curry and that kind of stuff, but I feel like Kidd's size on the defensive side of things will allow him to really play more up on and make them have to make more difficult shots. While Stockton had a lot of steals, which is great, so does James Harden, and James Harden is considered a terrible defensive player because it's either all or nothing. Now, John Stockton's a way better defensive player than Harden. I'm not saying that, but I just like Kidd's size. I think Kidd in today's modern game could take on a James Harden and be able to not necessarily shut him down, but keep him more under control with his size and his feet and his strength.
That's an interesting point you bring up. So, Jay Kidd, when did he retire? 2011? Was it 2012?
Something like that. Let's see here.
It wasn't too long after he won the championship with the Mavs. I don't even want to go far as to say it was 2014. I could be wrong, but I know
I think it was 2012, 2013, something like that.
Okay, so we're all right there in that range. He retired in the early 2010s, 2010s, whatnot. John Stockton played a long time ago. So Jason Kidd's been able to compete in today's NBA, whereas John Stockton can't. It's no longer. If you put John Stockton in today's NBA, he as successful and a competitive point guard in the game right now, so much so that we would consider calling him maybe one of the greatest of all time, and vice versa. If you put Jay Kidd back in John Stockton's shoes, does the way Jay Kidd played the game translate?
Well, I'm going to make the argument that both point guards can and would translate well in today's game because in John Stockton's times, the defensive rules are vastly different to what they are now. Hell, they're vastly different to when Jason Kidd played, even in both these players' primes. John Stockton is the definition of durable, and I bring this up is because when he specifically played so much with Karl Malone, Stockton himself had to run picks, and he would oftentimes have to set screens, and guys Karl Malone's size, if not bigger and occasionally smaller, would be plowing into John Stockton, and he'd jump right back up, be just fine. And another element to John Stockton's defense that I don't believe Jason Kidd has is that Stockton is scrappy. He will get in your face. He will swipe the ball away from you. I think there's a clip of John Stockton, if we want to use specific examples of him pursuing a much bigger guy who has the ball, a guy like Kevin McHale, and he would just swipe the ball away from him. He will dive for balls if they're loose. He'll fight for it. And I agree with all this. Can he score in today's NBA? Oh, 100%.
Yeah, that would be my only concern is he'd have to develop a three-point shot because he wouldn't be able to dribble in today's league, I don't think.
You don't think?
I don't think so.
Oh,
I think he could develop a three-point shot. He is talented enough to do so. But when he was, growing up, the three-point shot wasn't around, so he didn't shoot it.
Well, the thing is
but had he had the time to develop it, I think he could have became an excellent three-point shooter.
Okay.
Well,
because I kind of tend to see eye to eye there a little bit. Nick, what were you gonna say? I'm sorry.
Well, the thing is that with John Stockton, yeah, the defenders are gonna make him take a three-point shot, and I say John Stockton can, and if forced to, will shoot the three ball. And if we're playing in today's game, I feel like John Stockton would take the three ball more often. And according to his stats, John Stockton actually has a higher three-point percentage than Jason Kidd. But if we wanted to get into why, we can. But to the question, can Stockton shoot the three as much and be as consistent in today's game as he did back when he actually played, my argument is yes.
So, to that regard, I think we can agree that John Stockton's game would transfer nowadays. I think it would. Coolhand, do you think it would, or you think there's no shot?
Yeah, I absolutely believe that John Stockton. It was a tough decision for me not to take John Stockton. I think John Stockton is a fantastic player.
Okay,
he's a
then what's
little
that
undersized for my
factor?
taste, as the dominance of my team. But he, but he could absolutely play in today's game. He would just have to adjust by shooting more threes. He'd still facilitate at the high level that he did, but he would he would run more pick and rolls with Karl Malone. And he'd take more three shots off those pick and rolls instead of sending him out to Karl Malone.
So you say, though, that it was a tough decision for you not to take Johnson. Did take
Correct.
Jason Kidd. And so
Yes.
we talked about, obviously, Jason Kidd's game. He was drafted in very early, I want to say like 91 or 92, something like 93.
He was drafted
94,
with
okay, there you go.
Grant Hill. Robinson was actually the first pick in that draft.
So he made his game in late 90s, early 2000s, and then was able to translate and win a championship in the modern NBA.
Because he was considered one of the biggest busts of all time when he was originally with the Mavericks. When they had the Triple J's, and, Jamal Mashburn and Jim Jackson and Jason Kidd, they were supposed to take the Mavericks to the next level, and anything else they cratered. And were a garbage team really until Dirk became a force in the league. But he did go to the Nets, and he took a team where their second best player was Kenyon Martin to 2 straight NBA Finals.
He did.
You could argue, the LeBron James theory that the East was weak, which is fine, but he still got them there with pretty much garbage talent around him.
He had his day where there was no doubt he was the best point guard in the NBA. And he was what he was doing at the time. But, I mean, so you think, yes, if we drop Jason Kidd on those Utah Jazz teams, we see the same type of, Eastern Conference Finals battles with Michael Jordan that we got out of Stockton.
It's tough for me because I think John Stockton and Karl Malone were such great fits for each other.
I was going to say that. I don't think J. Kidd fits as well with Karl Malone. Now, he's not the greatest point guard of all time in comparison to John Stockton, but there is a fit there if you were to drop Jason Kidd back then. That fit may
I'm not sure if you drop, John Stockton on those Nets teams that they're any good.
Okay. That's a fair point. So, we've got it. I think I've got a good picture here. What I've decided is here at the end, I'm going to go through your lineups, and I'm going to pick a winner on each side. And then I'm going to give a predicted score. And as the moderator of this debate, I'm going to decide who wins. Because that's life. That's what I get to do. And listeners, if you don't like it, comment, get pissed off, call us, tell us we don't know anything, and we might talk about it in our next show. That'd be cool.
I'm pretty excited to hear this because now I can actually tune in at the last second and give you an unbiased opinion.
Hey! Well, boom! How are you, good sir?
I'm doing well, thank you, boys. Good to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Good to hear you on.
Did you get the gasoline stench off of you, or are you still soaked?
All that gas.
I'm really hoping someone doesn't light a match around me because I don't have a spare set of pants.
I was going to say, you sound a little giggly. I wondered if it was the gas fumes or what you're up to.
Hey, man, it's all right.
Well, perfect timing. So we just talked about these two guys and their point guard matchup. And they chose John Stockton versus Jason Kidd. I thought they both had some really good points. But now we have a really interesting part of this whole debate where you guys have picked the same shooting guard, Michael Jordan and Michael Jordan. And so
that's a given, yeah.
That's a given, right. So, guys, I mean, as if we really need to, what makes Michael Jordan the greatest the greatest shooting guard in many, many circles, the greatest player of all time?
I guess I can go first. Oh, geez. What can you say about Jordan that hasn't been said already? He is... In fact, what can you say that hasn't... Well, I guess I can expand on one thing. Is Michael Jordan... He's not often called Mr. Clutch to the same degree as Jerry West, but I honestly would put Michael Jordan in the same category as in terms of clutch that Jerry West is. Now, can you measure clutch? No. But I feel like if Michael Jordan's resume speaks for itself in terms of what we would consider today clutch moments. I mean, if the most important one that people go to is that one against I don't know the player's name, but it was Game 6.
I've got goosebumps as I picture it in my head.
Byron Russell for the Jazz.
Game 6 of the 98 finals, right?
Correct.
So Michael Jordan. So
it's none other than John Stockton.
The reason why John Stockton doesn't have a ring.
The reason he doesn't have 2 rings. So the point being is that Michael Jordan, he is clutch. Now, granted, you can say right now, well, he didn't make every single clutch shot, and that is 100% true. But I'd argue that actually,
I don't think anybody would argue with you. I don't think anybody would argue Michael Jordan is clutch, right?
I mean, he's absolutely clutch. He is the best guard of all time. He made big shots. He took a Bulls team that was absolute trash. I don't even talk about his impact on the court. All the stuff off the court. I mean, the 92 Dream Team that really changed the world of basketball. Air Jordan, Jordans are still, some of the most valued shoes in the world. It wasn't just what he did on the court. Now, what he did on the court is what made him so great and made him so brandable. But ask any of these professional athletes now, he's the guy that really changed the business side of the game for the players.
He really is, Zoob. I mean, I don't know if you agree with me, but, the most influential back.
Give it to Jordan on that one there. He's pretty much what made basketball in the modern era what basketball is today. I think a lot of the guys today, you talk about, people always want to have debates about Jordan versus some current superstar, but you couldn't even talk about those superstars today without Jordan. Jordan really set the stage for that. Even though he has his controversies and problems, but a lot of major athletes tend to have that. But his controversies and problems weren't the NFL level of controversy and problems.
Yeah, I was going to say he almost transcends his own problems. Not to jump in a little bit, but he kind of does transcend his own problems. I mean, there are very few public figures who can get into issues off the field, taboo things, gambling, prostitution, things like that. There are very few athletes that can have episodes like that and it doesn't tarnish their image. There's really very few people in general that are like that. And Michael Jordan, because of his elite status in basketball, is one of those.
And that's one thing I will say. It might be if he was in today's game where there's Twitter and there's Facebook and there's 24-hour news cycles all the time. He would have been caught doing this stuff back in the day instead of finding out after he's already great.
That's a good point. I don't want to jump off Michael Jordan because we could talk all day about him. But as we break down your 5 players, you guys both picked Jordan, so we could talk all day about how great he is. But let's get into the players where you didn't pick the same guy. Let's debate this team out. We're going to go to your small forwards. All right. Now, Mick, you took Larry Bird, and Coolhand, you took LeBron James. Now, something I think that's really interesting here, and I think it's maybe the most prevalent here than any of the matchups, is we talk about old NBA versus new NBA and what LeBron's able to do. Bird did at the time. Do you transplant Bird and is he just as good? Do you transplant LeBron and is he?
Well, I do think that Larry Bird would actually benefit from the rules of today's game more so than LeBron going back, because they just packed the crap out of him. And they would beat LeBron up as much as they could every single game, every day. Whereas Larry, he ended up having back issues, but Larry was a 3-point shooter. He was really the first big-time 3-point shooter in the league. And so in today's game, I think he would actually benefit.
Yeah, with Bird, he was already a versatile player in his own right, and with the current rules, I feel like his versatility would just be accelerated, if that makes sense. Like, he would shoot the 3 more. I feel like he'd get even more assists. He'd probably go for more rebounds, and yeah, every current team in the NBA wants a player like Larry Bird who can do a lot of things on the court, despite just being a small forward.
There's a lot of Klay Thompson and Larry Bird similarities in my eyes. They're both big guys. They can shoot threes. They can fin. I just feel like LeBron James is so dominant physically, just so physically compared to. I mean, you physically can't stop him. If he wants to get to the rim, he's going to get there.
Well,
yeah, and I definitely, I mean, LeBron and his physical dominance and the way he plays the game is undeniable. I really want to hear Mick sell this one to me.
So
that Larry Bird is pound for pound the better small forward than LeBron James.
So Larry Bird, I feel, when it comes to LeBron James, is what's going on inside their head. And I feel like since Larry Bird can talk a lot of shit, but then back up every single thing he says. Like, for example, there's this game where, I don't know the specifics, but he said, hey, I'm going to shoot this many points. And then he went and did it. And then there's another game where he said, Jesus, Vinny, what is that in the background? You eating chips?
So,
cashews? What are you eating?
I can't help but think here, though, back and forth throughout the game. Does LeBron wear Larry down, or is Larry outsmarting LeBron this whole way?
Well, my main point is the latter. I think that if LeBron doesn't have a game go his way, it gets to him. And with Larry Bird, you just don't have that issue. Larry Bird, I feel like, is mentally the vastly superior player in comparison to LeBron James. And I feel like if LeBron James, you could make an argument that he could wear Larry down, but I feel like it would eventually become a battle of mental attrition. I feel like, because on the court, I feel like those two players could go point for point. They could exchange threes, they could exchange drives, they could get their own steals and rebounds. But I feel like it's going to come down to a war of attrition inside the mind, and Larry has that down with no contest.
So I feel it's a war of attrition that'll come down to physicality.
Mm-hmm.
And LeBron would just wear him out. Just physically, they would have to throw several guys at LeBron. There's no way I think Larry could be able to hang with him a whole game.
Zoob, I'm real curious where you sit on this, because I'm kind of torn a little bit.
Yeah, I think that the whole thing that would come down to be was what kind of team would they be on? Because if you put Larry Bird in the modern era, which team are you going to put?
That makes sense. What team are you going to put him on? What's around him?
But
with
also feel
LeBron,
like Larry Bird
I don't
had better
feel like
teammates.
Yeah, I feel like LeBron, you could put him on a really bad team back then, and he would still pull that team up.
It's an interesting point.
Larry Bird would more take on like a Dirk role where, hey, I'm here, here's my presence on the court, but is he going to rat players to a major, push? Probably not.
Well, it's funny you say Dirk, because in essence of time, let's go ahead and hit that 4 spot. All right? So we've heard our arguments for John Stockton versus Jay Kidd. We've heard how great Michael Jordan is, okay? I think we got a lot of good stuff there about LeBron and Bird and kind of the differences. today versus old NBA and the physical versus the mind. But let's talk about Dirk and Tim Duncan, because their rivalry, that they kind of make up their own rivalry, and their greatness comes from playing each other all those years when Dallas and San Antonio were, kind of 1, 2, 3 there in the Western Conference with Kobe Bryant and what was going on in LA. So talk about that matchup a little bit. Talk about the Dirk versus Tim Duncan years, Dallas versus San Antonio.
I just love Timmy's defense. That's something he really brings to the table. That he changed shots. He made you earn every single shot that you took. And he wasn't nearly the scorer that Dirk was. He doesn't shoot threes. But if you hit him at the top of the key, he was going to make that shot every time.
Your point to he made every shot. You had to earn every shot. Yeah, Tim Duncan did force Dirk to earn his shots, and by God, did Dirk earn them. I can't make the argument that Dirk is a defender on the level of Tim Duncan. I just can't do that. But what I can say is that he's a competent defender. But where I feel like Dirk becomes more of a threat than Tim Duncan is what you mentioned earlier, his offensive range. Dirk can hit it from down low. He can hit it from mid-range. I know Tim Duncan has a good mid-range shot, but I'd argue Dirk's mid-range shot is better. And then you mentioned Dirk can shoot threes. Dirk can shoot threes, and he will knock them down a good percentage of the time.
Yeah.
So I feel like the reason Dirk was a better pick than Duncan is that while Duncan is the superior defender, I will admit that right now, I feel like Dirk Nowitzki spreads the floor out a bit more and I feel that his greater offensive prowess and capabilities surpasses Tim Duncan's superb defending abilities.
Well, I do feel like Timmy could get out on 3-point. He could defend out. He didn't have to just stay in the paint. He could defend out as well.
You sound a little defensive on Tim Duncan there.
I'm not gonna lie, that's my boy.
You sound a little upset, like Mickey might have offended you with something he said.
Still my boy.
Sounds like a showdown. So riddle me this then. Let's put Dirk on those San Antonio teams. Let's put Timmy on those Dallas teams, because Dirk got one championship. All right, and he was the guy that led them to that championship. There is no doubt. He was one of the most dominant forces in the league at the time, and he willed them to win that title in 2011.
That's the greatest individual performance I've ever seen in my life. Was in that 2011 finals. So that was unbelievable.
And that was all Dirk. But let's put Dirk on those San Antonio teams and Tim Duncan on those Dallas teams, because Tim Duncan got Manu Ginobili, got Tony Parker. At very early career, he had the tail end of David Robinson. He has, you've got the coaches to consider here. So what do you guys think there? I mean, does Dirk win 5 rings in San Antonio the same way Tim Duncan did? And does Tim Duncan get 2 or 3 championships where Dirk only got 1?
I absolutely think that Dirk slides in perfectly.
Yeah, Zub, what do you think there?
Yeah, I really think that Dirk would slide in perfectly with the Spurs, with their entire, their philosophy and how their coaching system is set up for, and their whole team before me mindset. Oh. Dirk would do great there.
Very similar mindset between the two.
To the question that if they'd succeed, I'm going to go a step further and say Dirk, if he's on the Spurs for the entirety of Tim Duncan's career, I'm going to go a step further and say Dirk wins 6 rings. And I'm going to say that the San Antonio Spurs wins the 2012-2013 finals against the Heat.
Fuck Ray Allen.
Yeah, one of the greatest shots of my memory.
And
you're going to go a step further, and you're going to say that San Antonio would have been even better had Dirk been there?
Yeah, for sure. I really think so. Because let's take a look at the markets here. Dallas, your first thought for sports is the Cowboys.
Yeah.
San Antonio, your first and only thought is the Spurs, right? It's basketball fever there. He would rise to stardom just as Tim Duncan did, but he's already got, the foreign
community.
Right. So, I mean, he is just going to expand there, and with the whole city on his back, he's going to do so much better there.
Coolhand, they're kind of ganging up and talking about how great Dirk would be on this San Antonio team, and I tend to agree. But, I mean, does Tim Duncan show up to those Dallas teams and get...
I think he rolls in... The thing is, there's such different types of players. And when you deal with that level of greatness, the teams would have built differently. The Mavericks would have built the team around Tim Duncan differently. Because of his defensive presence, they would have brought in more shooters, and it wouldn't have been the defensive guys as much as they were when they were in 2011 when they won, with Jason Kidd and John, Terry and Chandler and all those guys. They wouldn't need Tyson Chandler if Tim Duncan's around. So you reposition that money in something else. And
you're dealing a lot of hypotheticals there. Okay.
I will say in Tim Duncan's favor, though, that if Tim Duncan's on the 2006 team, the Mavs, I say they win the championship. I will say that in Tim Duncan's favor.
Okay. So there we go. And that's a nice showdown. All right. You guys are kind of seeing on eye to eye. Look how far we've come. We're down to our power forwards, and you two are getting along. You two sweet sons of bitches. So I think we've had a ton of great debate. Let's talk about the centers now, because this is a big kind of way to round out the five. So you've got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar over here with Mickey, and you've got Coolhand. I sound like a broken record because Coolhand, you've got Shaq. Kareem, Shaq, Lakers, same team, but different eras. And when I say I sound like a broken record, I keep bringing up, does Shaq translate to old ball? Does Kareem translate to the late 90s, early 2000s when Shaq was still a dominant player?
Well, the thing to consider with Shaq immediately is that, actually this fits with Kareem too, is that Kareem and Shaq were both part of a legendary NBA duos. Shaq had Kobe and Kareem had Magic Johnson. Now,
don't forget Shaq worked one with Dwayne Wade as well.
That is true. And so I feel like the argument's going to boil down to, okay, can they be as dominant on their own skill level without Magic, without Kobe, without Dwayne Wade, etc., etc.? And I feel like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is... I think he holds his own no matter... I would go so far as to say no matter what era in basketball we put him in. Do I feel like he could dominate in the Shaq and Yao Ming and Tim Duncan era? 100%. Do I feel like he could dominate in his own era? Oh, well, he did dominate his own era, so yes, technically. Do I feel like he could be as dominant in the 60s with Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain? 100%. Do I feel like he could dominate in today's game? My answer is yes. And a good chunk of the argument I'm making here, not all of it, but a good chunk of it is his signature move, the skyhook, because no one in history can block it. No one.
It is a physically unstoppable shot. But you know what Shaq is? He's the physically unmovable force. If he puts his ass down, you ain't moving it. And I've never seen a player where it's like, no, you have to go around me. You're not going to go through me. You have to go around me.
Shaq is...
Which I think would have played in Lou Alcindor's day. That's right, I went out with Lou Alcindor. And the thing is, I think his game today wouldn't translate as well because he can't shoot for anything, even though he did retire with one of the highest shooting percentages in history.
That's the thing.
That's mostly because he slammed everything.
Yeah,
that's the thing that holds me back a little bit. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the NBA's all-time leading scorer.
To boil down my argument, and when it comes to Kareem versus Shaq, Kareem has more offensive weapons at his disposal, and as compared to Shaq, and defensively, if you're looking at their entire careers, Kareem does have more blocks and rebounds than Shaquille O'Neal, although I will admit right now, Shaquille O'Neal's later years, he was riddled with injuries, and Kareem didn't have that issue, so I feel like that's what hinders Shaq's stats a little bit. But yeah, my argument is Kareem is on par defensively with Shaq, if not better, and Kareem has more offensive weapons at his disposal than Shaquille O'Neal.
Well, Kareem also played in an era with no three-point shot at all, or at least a percentage of his career. And so people had to drive to the basket more. That's why I feel like he got more blocks, is because they had to drive more than they did in Shaq's era. That was really when Shaq was really around with the development of the three-point shot as an actual weapon. He kind of retired before it became big, but, he had to defend the whole floor. Whereas in Kareem's day, he really just had to stay in the paint.
I will concede that, but I will add that Kareem could defend the floor if it was asked of him.
I would agree with that. I do agree.
Zoob, this is a tough one for me.
I really agree that you have to notice the difference there between what they were asked to defend, but I can't get past how big Shaq is. If we're talking primetime Shaq, yeah, that's your pick right there.
That's a dominant force. So we've heard the arguments. Okay, everything's been laid out there. We've got all five down. We'll run back through this real quick. Mickey with John Stockton, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Dirk Nowitzki, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Coolhand with Jason Kidd, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Tim Duncan, and Shaquille O'Neal. Now, what we're going to do real quick is Zuby, me and you are going to tackle this. We're each going to go down this list. We've kind of hinted to it as we debate the players back and forth, but let's give a definitive pick either way, total it up, and let's decide a winner of this thing once and for all.
I like that.
All right. So, Mickey, Coolhand, you guys can sit there, sweat. I'm sure you're shaking a little bit. You're probably very nervous sexually. It's okay. Everything's going to be fine. Let's start with the point guards. John Stockton, Jason Kidd. Zuby, who you got?
Jason Kidd, without a doubt.
I actually am going to go John Stockton. I'm going to go John Stockton because I'm kind of going out on a bit of a limb here. But I firmly believe that John Stockton wasn't as much of a shooter and a scorer because that's not what was asked of him at the point guard position when he played. In fact, he's got guys that he played with high up on all-time scoring lists that I think have no business being there with their talent level. Karl Malone is not one of the best basketball players of all freaking time. He was great, but he's an all-time leading scorer because of what John Stockton did. If John Stockton plays in today's NBA, I think he's able to develop that shot. I think he becomes one of the better three-point shooters in the league, along with already being a deadly passer. I think he would translate really well to today's game. I'm going to take Stockton.
Yay, we split the vote.
Actually, I'm giving a little bit more thought here, and I'm going to roll with you actually on this one. I'm going to go with Stockton. My big change here, here's my big change. Hear me out, right? So I get to have this opinion, and here's my opinion for that.
Free country, so
Stockton's been around. He played from the 80s all the way up to the 2000s. That's a long time. And Stockton wasn't taking cheap seasons either. He was playing 82. You know, he was playing the entire time. This guy was not taking cheap seasons. And Kidd, on the other hand, he was a 90s boy. You know, and he did have some cheap seasons along the way. So that just goes to show you that Stockton's a little bit more reliable.
Yeah, I see it too. It's another personal Coolhand, but in the debate of John Stockton or Jay Kidd, I'm gonna take John Stockton. Now with the shooting guard, you both pick Michael Jordan, so you're both gonna get a point. So we're gonna go right back into small forward. All right, Mick, you got Larry Bird. Coolhand, you got LeBron James. Now, I'm going to take LeBron James here. I think, you know, he's just a physical specimen. The way he plays the game at that position, unprecedented in the game of basketball. I think he's a head case. There's a lot of good things to say about LeBron James, but in the battle of Larry Bird or LeBron, I'm going to take LeBron. Zub, what do you think?
Oh, okay. All right. So it's a real toss-up there. I see both opinions there. You know, I like Larry Bird, but I think what it all comes down to be.
There's a butt coming, though.
I think what it all comes down to be is that my pick, it's just gonna have to be the LeBron James.
The LeBron
James. The guy who actually goes toe-to-toe in debates with Michael Jordan. So I'm gonna go LeBron James.
Yeah, that kind of does it for me too. He goes toe-to-toe in debates about the greatest player of all time. And yeah, I think it's a no-brainer. So that actually gives us a tie right now. We had 2 for John Stockton against Jay Kidd. You both washed out with Michael Jordan, but now we've got 2 for LeBron James. So Coolhand and Mick, you're both sitting at 3 apiece with 2 guys to go. Let's get into our power forwards. Zuby, I want you to take the lead on this one. Tim Duncan versus Dirk Nowitzki.
I'm going with the Duncans because as much as I love Dirk, right? I love Dirk, I really do. And I put a lot of blame on Dallas and Cuban for not getting him more, but Cuban was in a win now mode his entire most of Dirk's career. You know, it isn't until recently that they're like, whoa, pump the brakes, we actually got to keep these draft picks, kind of thing. You know, Cuban was, in his defense, trying to make the best moves constantly. Tim Duncan didn't really experience that because the Spurs were willing to sacrifice, star power for some people and say, hey, look, you're going to have to work with some new players here and see, help coach them up and raise them up. And Duncan did that. And he not only did that, but they changed into some leaders on the Spurs, and they kept winning during that.
Yeah, he did. Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker are not Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker without Tim Duncan being on that court.
Absolutely.
And, this is a really tough one for me, for sure, because I'm a lifelong Mavericks fan. I love Dirk, and Tim Duncan was the bane of my existence for a really long time because we just couldn't get. They were better than Dallas for the better part of that. All of that. They were better than Dallas. Tim Duncan, I think defensively, it's not even close. He's a significantly better defender. He defends the way a 5 does, and really kind of is what has become. He was one of the first guys that it was kind of confusing. Is he a 4? Is he a 5? Plays defense like a 5. He can kind of score like a 4. He can kind of move like a 4. But he's 7 foot tall. I mean, that all kind of comes from Tim Duncan. He's great. But my vote is going to go with Dirk Nowitzki as the greatest power forward of all time. and it's because Tim Duncan always had a wonderful supporting cast. But if everybody else was just totally cold. In fact, if Manu Ginobili isn't on the team, if Tony Parker isn't on the team, and you're dealing with lesser parts, I don't know if those Spurs teams are quite. I just don't know if Tim Duncan could score enough to be, one of these top dominant players of all time. Dirk Nowitzki is the number 6 all-time scorer in the NBA, and we talk about his championship. Tyson Chandler was a great force on that team, but other than that, Dirk beat LeBron James and Dwayne Wade at the peak of their career basically single-handedly. And, he took the team single-handedly there. 6. You say Cuban was on mode. And he was. The team was never built with young draft picks. It was always kind of this weird supporting cast that was put around Dirk. Terry there for a while, but it was kind of interchangeable. Dirk was able to have such an illustrious, productive career. I think they're both, if you had them on their franchise, you just adore them forever. But I like controversy. You took Tim Duncan, I'm going to take Dirk.
Yeah, it's not a bad pick. It's not a really bad pick. Because Dirk has that long history, 80s, since the 80s. It's unbelievable what success he has, and he's been a real team player for the Mavs. He's always been willing to move around his positions. He's always willing to listen. And to shine a little more light on that, it was Cuban. He wasn't always in Dirk's picture there, right?
Right.
Dirk did. Cuban showed up and Dirk was already there. So right. In that defense, I can't put everything against Dirk because of Cuban showing up late. So it's really tough pick. It's a guy who's been there for a long time. He solidified himself. He was an athlete. He made all the right moves. He's still playing today. You made a great call there. You can't fault him for that. You really can't. And I got to stick with Tim Duncan. He came on the scene. He was a fireball right away, and he came out, and whenever he was done, that was it. He left it 100% all on the court.
And I mean, there is no doubt we're talking about 2 of the most dominant power forwards in the history of this game.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely.
So we've got a tie here, and we got one more guy to hit on before we'll let the listeners go for the night. Shaquille O'Neal versus Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I'll go first, and Zuby, I'll let you take us home on this one. In the battle between Kareem and Shaq, I think of Kareem trying to come into the league right now, and the likes of Anthony Davis and Giannis up in Milwaukee, Joel Embiid, some of the big guys that play this game now. I think Kareem competes with them, but I think he's another guy in that list. Shaquille O'Neal was at his peak right now in the NBA. He'd be singular. He'd be Shaq. He'd be what he was when he was in the 90s. He's the most dominant player I've ever seen on a basketball court. As far as his size and the way he plays the game, I'm taking Shaquille O'Neal. Man, it's close, but it's not that close.
All right, I hate to do this too, but I'm actually gonna go on the side of controversy here, and I'm not gonna pick Shaq because Kareem and Shaq, they had very, very similar careers.
Chaos.
Both 20-year guys. Both of them very long careers. Both of them very highly all-star touted people. 16, 15 all-star game appearances for both of them. That's huge. And you can't negate that. They're really good, solid picks. But then what it comes down to me is that if you look at the games played between Shaq and Kareem, Kareem was constantly there. He was knocking on 80s at 79, 80, those kind of games every single season. And Shaq, while he was there in the beginnings of 80s, all of a sudden it just started tanking, 72, 69, 50s in the seasons. And
the fall-off was very steep.
Yeah, whenever the wheels started falling off, man, they were just flying off. And Shaq was I give him credit, he's trying to push through it. But those constant years add up, and they don't compare to years like Kareem.
It's tough to argue with that. I mean, and the points alone. The guy's got, what, 36,000, 38,000 points? Something like that. The NBA's all-time leading scorer at the 5 position. You know, there's a lot to love about Kareem, but I'm sorry. There was just something about watching the way Shaquille O'Neal played that position. He revolutionized the position just because of how big. Just because of his sheer mass. And, you know, it wasn't some special move. It wasn't, you know, he had great teams. I mean, he did have great teams around him. He had Kobe. He had all kinds of stuff. But when he was in Orlando and he didn't have great teams around him, he was dominant. I got to stick with my boy Shaq. But what you did there is you sent us into a tie, my friend.
Are we not going to debate how these teams function as a unit?
You know, I'll let that be my tiebreaker here. So, as I'm looking at John Stockton, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, Dirk, or Kareem, and then I look at Jason Kidd, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Tim Duncan, and Shaquille O'Neal, it's extremely difficult. You've got two just, I mean, top to bottom, some of the best talent that's ever played this game. But I'm going to take Jason Kidd, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Tim Duncan, and Shaquille O'Neal. Top to bottom, those 5 beat the other 5, I think.
Well, I think I'm gonna let them sell it to me. Let's hear from the boys real quick here, and I'm gonna let them give one last sales pitch about why their team would beat the other team, and we're gonna let Coolhand go first in that one.
So for me, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, this may not be the greatest team in today's game. I do think Michael Jordan would become a great three-point shooter. Especially on that team, he'd become a little more specialized with all the other scoring talent around him. But I wanted that physical dominance. I wanted guys who could go out there and they were just going to dominate you every possession if they really wanted to. And I think this team really does that. If they go down there, you're not gonna physically be able to stop them. They're gonna have to stop themselves.
All right. So my counter to that is, while the best way to combat versatility is to, combat domination is with versatility. I misspoke. So, yes, Shaq is physically dominant, but he can't stop the skyhook. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he can shoot it from mid-range. Kareem can shoot, Shaq can't. And with Duncan, as great of a defender he is, he also can't stop Dirk's patented one-legged fadeaway. And plus, Dirk can shoot it from anywhere on the court. So, again, more versatility, more range. With Bird, he is also a three-point shooter. He can also, he's also a scrappy defender. He will talk shit to you the entire time and back up every single thing he says. And then with Jordan, Jordan's Jordan. And then when it comes to Stockton, he is a pass-first point guard, and his main job is to facilitate. And with this, when I put him on this hypothetical team, he has many more options for him. He could pass the ball to Jordan, and Jordan can either could do a playmaker. He could cross over a defender. He has a lot of options with Michael Jordan. If Stockton gives the ball to Bird, Bird's either going to drive or he's going to make a three-point shot, or he's going to talk smack to LeBron and then he's going to drain his shot, or he's going to do whatever it is he's going to do. With Dirk and Kareem, if Stockton wanted to, he could run the pick and roll with them. He could play small ball with this team. He could have Dirk go to the three-point line, pass it to him, and have Dirk drain a three. If Kareem's down low, he could pass it to Kareem, and have Kareem run an isolation play against Shaquille O'Neal. In which case, Kareem could either A, just shoot it straight up, which he'll make, B, run the skyhook, which Shaquille O'Neal can't stop, or C, Kareem could back up a bit and take a more mid-range shot, which is in his repertoire. So, And that's my main argument. My team is more versatile. My team is the higher IQ team. I feel like they will make the smarter plays. And I also feel like they are mentally stronger than Coolhand's team. And that is my argument.
A lot of really good points there. A lot of really good points there and back and forth. Dude, what do you think?
Yeah, I think even though I've heard it all, I'm going to have to agree with Coolhand on this one here. There's some players on this team that I actually give the advantage back to Miggy on that one, but it really boils down to just having that consistency of success that really decides the team for me.
Yeah, and there's a lot, position by position, there's a lot of back and forth here, but I think when you look at it as a unit, you know, Mick, you made some good points there, but I am going to give the tip of the hat to Coolhand.
Boo!
Yeah. I'm glad you sound so thrilled. So, one, we did it. Guys, this was the Backyard Showdown, the debate of the century. We've decided our two best starting five that our guys can come up with. And Coolhand, you got the upper hand. Yeah, that was a pun. Did that on purpose. You got the upper hand. Your team came together better. And I hope the listeners enjoyed. Make sure you stay up with us, as in our next episode, we're talking March Madness, NFL free agency, Major League Baseball opening day, and NBA and NHL playoffs, and many other things going on in the sports world. Thanks for messing around here. It's a lot of backyard bullshit.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in, y'all.
Thanks for listening, guys.
This has been the first episode of the Backyard Showdown. We will make this a recurring segment, so stay tuned when we announce what the next debate will be. In the meantime, take care and have a good one.
Peace out.